I'm a technology junkie, man. I love it. I think it's great, but I also believe that it's a blessing and a curse. I think we're inundated and overwhelmed with tech and data and all this stuff. For me, the bottom line, it's a great tool. It's feedback, but it will never take the place of human contact and human interaction and kind of the intuitive feel that a coach develops over time.
Sports science, strength and conditioning, high performance coaching. Welcome to the Decoding Excellence Show. Today's episode is brought to you by Vald Performance, the makers of the NordBord. If you haven't checked out their website yet, I highly suggest you head over there, whether it's return to play, injury prevention, or just plain performance testing. Vald Performance has the tools that you need. Check them out at valdperformance.com. Today on the show, I'm joined with Director of Performance for Liberty Men's Basketball, Henry Barrera. Prior to Henry's time at Liberty Men's Basketball, he was a performance training specialist at Nike World Headquarters in Beaverton. While at Nike, he was instrumental in designing training content for multiple projects, including the Jordan Brand's Terminal 23 in New York and The Hangar in Los Angeles. This is a wide-ranging conversation that discusses performance model and the systems and strategies he implements at Liberty to help his student athletes achieve a greater level of training success. We discuss performance technologies, including HRV and First Beat. We discuss elements of his performance model as it ranges from the physiological work that he does with his student athletes to the psychological approaches and frameworks that he utilizes to bring out the best of applied sports psychology modalities. He shares his own personal journey within coaching and how he developed the culture and how he takes a long-term athletic development model to his student athletes. This is a tremendous conversation, and I appreciate Henry's time. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Coach Henry Barrera. Coach, how's it going? Good morning.
What's up, Adam? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really well, man. It's for us, it's first round NCAA basketball, so it is getting kind of crazy for us, but I'm excited for today, and so the excitement here is pretty darn high. How are things in your neck of the woods, man?
Things are great, man. I wish we were in the NCAA tournament as well, but we fell a little short. We're playing in the CIT, so any postseason play is fun. So I'm excited for this time of year.
Yeah, like it's hard not to get excited for this sport. It's the magic of postseason play. I mean, that's why everybody spends so much time there as they do during training in the summer and throughout the fall to make it anywhere in postseason. So the fact that anyone is still playing in March is a testament to its own self, man. So, hey, I wanted to bring you on because I think there's a couple things that really resonate when I was going through and obviously on social media. And I think that you're doing some tremendous work at Liberty. And I want to discuss some of that today. As far as some of the performance models and some of the systems that you have set up and what you're doing with the men's basketball team, and kind of having a show that's a little bit in sort of the March Madness spirit, a little bit of basketball centric. So even though there was a little bit of a bio, I'd love to kind of have you fill in the audience about what you're currently up to, what your current role is, and maybe a little bit of the history of what got you there and your own sort of individual coaching journey, if you will.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love, well, first, thanks for having me. I love what you're doing. I think it's pushing just the profession and challenging people to be better. So props to you. I appreciate the work you're doing there. Yeah, so quick, just a 30-second, kind of in a nutshell. I've been at Liberty for about 2 years. Initially came in just to work with men's basketball, and things have kind of evolved. So now, technically, I'm the co-director of Olympic Sports and Performance with Shelton Stevens, who I think is just legit. I think he's really good. And so I'll kind of move into a role of sports performance, human performance over the next year, really laying this foundation of a performance model.
And that's, again, I mean, I see that all the time that, coaches kind of come in, they start immediately working with one sport, And then, other coaches within the organization start to recognize some of the great things you're doing with one sport and want to apply some of the same models to their own respective sports. And with that, I'd love for us to maybe explore that performance model that you have set up or you've continued to evolve at Liberty, and maybe the genesis of that through your various other stops at other organizations, universities, and et cetera. Can you describe a little bit of detail of some of the things that you're doing from that performance model, what you're doing at Liberty?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I think I'm just going to kind of take it back a little bit, give you a little history of where I've been and what I've done. So I played college basketball, and I was always looking for a way to get better, a way to compete. I'm 5'7" on a good day. So I had to find a way to bridge the gap. And, my parents were people who, whatever you wanted to do, they were going to put you in a position where you could do that. So, played 4 years of college ball, ended up playing 1 year overseas in Sweden. And, for me, the curiosity of what can I do with my body and how can I bridge this gap really set the tone for what I do, who I am, how I live my life. So it's just kind of the evolution of something that's really personal to me. I'm really passionate about it. So that's the basis for the performance model.
So, and again, based on your sort of professional experience and your time in Sweden, I mean, what if you were to juxtapose maybe your own personal training at that time in our own sort of personal pursuit, whether it's athletics or coaching, what were some of the differences that you saw in the way that you conducted or was coached by other people versus maybe some of the systems that you're trying to establish at your university? Yeah,
that's great. So I think the biggest thing is back then. So I'm going to be 40 here at the end of March. So back then I think it was just go as hard as you can every single day. That's the only way you're going to get better. So there's no rest days, there's no off days. You're just doing what you do and beating yourself as much as possible. And so I think the biggest change and shift has been this idea of holistic training and coming at training from multiple vantage points, if you will. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think probably the genesis of this performance model happened back then. It was the need for me to get better. And I think this when you're at a mid-major or you're somewhat of a quote unquote underdog, you're looking for every little advantage. You want to look for any way to put student athletes in a position where they can have success, where they can really push. So I think that's really the story of our lives, man. You're trying to get better. Just through this podcast, I'm trying to get better. We're all trying to find ways to serve and push our athletes.
Yeah. I completely relate to it. I think, on one level, that the athletes that we continue to bring in are exceptional young men and women. And that's a testament to the character and the people and the coaching staff going out through talent identification and recruiting. But when they're involved in our program, then we absolutely have to develop the athletes. I mean, we won't have very many, if ever, in the history of Wichita State one and dones. So it's crucial. So I would completely agree with what you said. I mean, I think the days of training as hard as you can for as long as you can without any sort of understanding of this sort of training stress balance and recovery balance hopefully are starting to fall by the wayside. With that, what are some of the things that you've recognized? I mean, as you've gone through this evolution between not only training hard, but the need and the importance of recovery, what are some of the examples or the ways that you guys are balancing the practice demands, the training demands with the recovery and rejuvenation that you guys need?
Yeah, this is going to get deep today, man. I can feel it already. So I think just really living life, man. If I look at the last 20 years of my life, I've really been around 15 to 25-year-old athletes in some capacity, So it's seeing how we all live life. And to me, the question is, what's possible if everything comes together for you? So if you start to put these things together, which we'll probably get into, the mindset, the sleep, the nutrition, the training, the readiness, and how do you balance and manage those things. I think that's where the money's at. That's where you're going to make the biggest improvements. You're going to accelerate improvement. So, I think there's 3 staples in my life. I ask questions, I pursue answers, and I try to connect the dots. And those are the things that, within this, it helps us balance the training. It helps us ask questions. If you have a training session and 3 kids come in and say, "Hey, my back hurts," or I have a weird pain in my shoulder, then it's time to step back and kind of analyze what we're doing. Is it working? Is it not working? How can we get better? Does that kind of answer your question a little bit, or we can keep going on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, we'll go down this rabbit hole as we see fit, but I love the response. I mean, I think so many of us sometimes go through a training sort of coaching session and aren't constantly evaluating the program, the system, the efficiencies or inefficiencies of it. So I love the fact that you have this beginner's mindset of always asking questions, always listening to what the responses are and connecting those dots. How, in the evolution of your coaching journey, from a young coach, you talked about turning 40 here soon, how has your ability to listen changed, which I think is a very undervalued skill and an underdeveloped skill in the interns and young coaches I bring into our program? How is that maturation and that sort of journey into asking better questions and being able to listen, how has that evolved over your years?
Yeah, that's so big, Adam. Man, I think as a young coach, you want so bad to be good and to make an impact, that you kind of rush. So I think the evolution, it's like a fine wine, it just gets better and better. You learn how to, take the good with the bad and really, it's self-examination. You're going to be humbled at times. And so it's learning from every experience, every, education piece, every little engagement with student athletes. It's just being observant, So for me, the biggest evolution has been to step back and really, look at things more holistically and how one thing affects the other and how there's an integrated system to what we're doing.
What I love that you said, which I think, I'm just going to clarify it because I think it's so powerful, is that I think it takes humility. It takes being humble. And I see this, and I think this is sort of a critical flaw of our industry. And, I know we're in it, so I feel like we have at least the vantage point to be critical of our industry, but there's a lot of artificial egotism and machoism of this. And I think, like a book like Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy, it takes a humble coach to recognize that, not everything is perfect. You're going to continue to evolve, continue to ask better questions, continue to listen to the feedback. That's not being soft. That's not being fragile or not setting your athletes up for success. That's being flexible in this day of age of training athletes and being, ability to bend and move and flexible to what the needs and the demands are. I think that's I just wanted to highlight that because I do think that's a very important quality and something that I certainly respect in you. You spoke about a holistic approach to training. In your own words, I mean, what does that mean for you, and how has that evolved, I guess, over the last couple years of your last, let's say, 5 to 10 years of coaching?
I think that's kind of the foundation of a performance model, right? So for me, there's kind of 3 tiers to it. One is a foundation. It's to cultivate culture daily. And kind of, I'm a really visual guy, Adam. So you're going to crack up. I'm sitting in the library. I'm in a room with all whiteboard walls all around. So I wrote a couple of thoughts down. I'll send you a picture. You're gonna probably laugh, but that's okay.
Oh, I love it.
So anyway, I have this vision in my head of culture being like the fascia within our body, right? It holds everything together. It's the integrated piece that brings everything together. So that being said, I don't want to get too far off track, but a foundation, cultivating the culture, and then the big picture, this long-term athletic development, you hit on it with players that we get at Wichita State or Liberty are going to be around for 4 years. So it's that big picture. And then probably the third piece of that is really helping them and ourselves really push boundaries, explore the limits of, our capabilities, our abilities. So that's kind of the three. If I had to put it into 3 points, that would be it.
No, I think I love the fact that, and I see it, that organizations will rush out to adopt and to acquire a particular technology because that's cutting edge or that's in vogue or whatever, without sort of the prerequisite of developing the cultural aspects of what it means to take care of their business, the standards, the operations, the fascia of the organization or the culture, and just chase technology. So I love the fact that when you share that's the foundation, that's the bottom of the pyramid, and then the need to develop otherwise the student athletes that are within it, and built upon that culture is that LTAD approach of slow cooking athletes through 4 years to help optimize various inefficiencies or performance limiting factors of their athletic performance, and then to push boundaries. I love that because so much of this field, I think, is in drastic need of evolution and looking outside and borrowing from the fringes of other sort of industries and organizations and borrowing strategies, whether it's leadership or innovation or technology or system management approaches. So to kind of bring this all back in, I mean, you talked a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of this performance model. You already spoke about optimizing sleep and talking about the importance of recovery. I'm sure nutrition and the physical attributes. And at WSU, we also have a high performance model that kind of goes through some of these things. So if you would, and you feel comfortable sharing a little bit, I mean, I would love to kind of know what the big pictures are, your big rocks, as far as some of the things that you discuss with your student athletes or your coaching staff or administration when you went about the evolution of creating and putting in place or integrating this performance model at Liberty.
Yeah, that was well said. That was really, really good, man. I'm here taking notes. I got my journal out, so I'm writing thoughts down. So a couple things, man. I look at what we do. Like I said, I have 4 kids, so I'm always trying to give them nuggets, and I think one of the things that resonates at our household is learning how to earn. What does it mean to be elite and how do you get there? So it's really this idea of earning that piece, earning what you get. So I'm going to give you just a quick overview. So mindset, that to us is the psychological framework that makes up who you are, how you see the world, but really more importantly is how you operate within that context. And that's, pretty much stolen from Michael Gervais in Finding Mastery. During my time at Nike, I was exposed to a lot of high level people, and he was one of those guys. So he has been great, in communication, and, his podcast is a good one for anybody listening to this as well. Sleep is really the foundation of recovery, for the body, mind, and soul. And at a place like Liberty, I think the spiritual aspect plays such a big role in what we do on a day-to-day basis, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down to if you want to know a little bit more about that. Nutrition, that's just fueling performance. We have a sports nutrition expert here on campus who we refer to, our student athletes and try to get them on the same page. Training is where, you and I kind of get excited about this, how we're building training, integrating the sports performance really into building our athletes. And then the readiness piece is just a proactive approach to stress, to stress management and lifestyle management. So I hope that kind of gives you the big picture, and we can tear those apart, and love to hear your thoughts because I know that you've done a lot in this area, and that's why I was so excited to talk to you today. Yeah,
no, look, I am always, again, likewise with you. I mean, obviously I have my notebook out and I'm taking notes because I think, leaders are learners, and the more that you can read and take notes and listen and follow what is otherwise the advice other people are giving, the better you'll become as a practitioner. And And you touched upon it. I love the fact that you have this applied sport psychology or psychological approach, call it whatever you will, mindset, that borrowing from Michael Gervais, who I think is just an exceptional human being, a tremendous communicator. Again, I will champion the same thoughts that you shared. I mean, Finding Mastery is a podcast that I listen to repetitively just because of the consistency and his interview style, which I think we can all become better interviewers. And thus the reason sort of this Decoding Excellence show is to learn how to ask better questions for me. But I love, and again, I think you being around sort of the Oregon area and your time at Nike, I mean, absolutely, you were exposed to some tremendous mentors and people and high-level thinkers on the West Coast. And I completely agree. I mean, our same model, touches upon the physical attributes of training, and that's sort of our day job, right? The X's and O's of being a strength and conditioning professional and a performance coach, and borrowing the mindset from the psychological approach is important. In my time, I mean, a person that I tremendously look up to is Dr. Andy Walsh from back in the days of the United States ski and snowboard, but now certainly at Red Bull High Performance. In their model, I mean, they had two factors of which I've just struggled to implement at this university, which is sort of that spirituality portion, and then sort of what they call their X factor, or that innovation factor. I'd actually love to kind of go down that route and go down the road, because I think it's intriguing to me, and hopefully to the listening audience, what you guys are doing in that spirituality, because that's just not an attribute that I've really explored much. So I'd love for you to expand a little bit on that too.
Yeah, for sure. So I think first, one of the things that's been really, really beneficial for me is we've kind of partnered with our psychology department. I've been meeting 2 or 3 times a week with Dr. Ben Wood, who's a professor here at Liberty, and he's en route to to another master's degree in sports psychology. So really, we sit in my office and we talk 2 to 3 times a week, maybe 10 to 30 minutes, whatever the day brings. So we've just kind of hit it off. But yeah, going down the spirituality piece, I think Liberty is a Christian university. I'm a believer in God. And so I think we have pillars within our basketball program. So everybody's got pillars: play hard, play smart, play together, play with purpose. So to play hard for us means compete, give your very best. To play smart means accountability with discipline. Together means we over me. And then purpose is kind of what we're talking about. That's the audience of one. So I think we have a little more freedom at Liberty if you're a person of faith to share that and to live that. I think there's a flip side to that, where we're in a place where you're fed so much of that it can become overwhelming at times. So there's a fine line of making that come to life and making it real and authentic and genuine in your own life. So I hope that answers a little bit, but keep asking questions, man. I love this. I love the dialogue. I love the questions you're asking.
Yeah, I think that's interesting in the aspects, whether you're a person of faith or whether your beliefs might differ from the teammate to the next to the left of you or to the right of you. I think what's important that is a sense of purpose of potentially playing for something that's greater than you. And that could be your own spiritual beliefs, or that could be the sense of playing for your teammates or playing for the organization, or the name on the front of your jersey versus the back of your jersey. And just getting the idea of being a little bit less selfish and moving the purpose of why you play to a selfless endeavor, I think is a powerful approach to it. I'd love to kind of turn this around a little bit. I know again, maybe it will be confusing for the listening audience to kind of jump forward and jump back, but exploring your coaching journey, I mean, were there people that in your life, I mean, significant mentors, people that pushed you to think the way that you do, and people that you owe, whether a debt of gratitude for setting you up for the success that you've had?
Definitely, man. I don't think any of us get anywhere without the people in our lives. That's so big time. I attribute a lot of what I do and who I am to my time at Nike. I was there for about 7 or 8 years. So I got to spend time around guys like Patrick Ward and Keith Emilio. And I was just fortunate to pick their brains and see how they operated. I didn't get a ton of time around them, but when I did, I took advantage of it. And probably the guys that are my sounding boards right now are guys like Bobby Stroop from APEC in Texas, Alex Molden. He's one of my best friends. He played in the NFL for 9 or 10 years. And, we talk as often as possible about training, about life, about anything and everything. And then Josh Carruthers is another guy that I think is doing really, really good work as well. And these are all guys that, that we lived life at Nike together. So you just learn from watching and asking questions and observing. So, yeah.
What I found fascinating, and certainly in my own sort of evolution, Keith at Nike and sort of the being sort of instrumental in the approach with Nike Spark and the creation of sort of an index of sort of key performance metrics in a wide variety of different sort of physiological field tests. Patrick Ward obviously speaks for himself and sort of the reputation that he has, and just as far as a creative mind and thinker and a brilliant sport scientist. So you were certainly around a lot of influential people that are still in the game. So, I absolutely have to imagine that helped shape your path and sort of molded maybe your ability to think the way that you do. And I know this is an impossible question to answer, but I'm just kind of curious. I mean, do you find yourself thinking that, the chicken versus the egg, the nature versus the nurture? I mean, did these guys help shape the way you think, or do you think that you maybe resonated and gravitated to this environment, this sort of innovation of the Nike organization, because that's the way you already thought, and these people really resonated and found a common place?
Yeah, no doubt, man. These guys for sure challenged me to think outside the box. If you've ever spent any time around Patrick Ward, that dude is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Like he is brilliant, so just being around people like that, it's very, very humbling, but it's also challenging, So we all have our different path, and we all run our own race, and I think a lot of times there's so much information out, and we can get caught up in this trap of comparing ourselves to other people when in reality, like, our job is to do our job, and that's it. So we can learn and we can be shaped and all that. And I'm very, very appreciative, for any time and anything that I learn from anybody, really. But I think we just have to continue to get better at what we do. We have to take from all resources. So I can't wait to listen to this and think about things that maybe I wasn't thinking before. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Certainly in the beginning of the show, we discussed sort of the wide-ranging topics of using this performance model and the evolution of your own sort of background and pathway into coaching through your various stops and now at Liberty. I would love to kind of bring this full circle and start talking a little bit about the basketball aspects of it. So when you have a college freshman arrive, whether it's, a 6'4", 6'5" post, or, a 6'1", 5'11" guard, or whatever it might be, what are some of the commonalities that you see now that I'm sure we both can relate to, that a 19-year-old college freshman rolling in, what are they missing in that holistic model, that piece, and where do you start sort of at square one to help build the lifestyle and all the integrative approaches of developing a robust, full round, holistic basketball athlete in this sort of 21st century?
Great question. I think first, I'm always a little taken aback by how little they know about training, given the age that we live in and the thousands upon thousands of so-called experts. So yeah, I'm a little bit taken aback by freshmen coming in for the most part. I think I'm going to give you. I'm a big acronym guy and a big like 3A's, 3D's, whatever. So awareness is number one. I'm going to give you 3A's here. Awareness, like, do you know what is expected? That's awareness to me. And then accountability is objective feedback. Like, is there a way that you're keeping yourself accountable, or that we're as a staff keeping you accountable? And then action is you can't get around doing the work. So I think as freshmen come in, it's just kind of giving them this big picture and not overwhelming them, but giving them a picture of like, this is kind of what's expected. These are all the pieces. We're going to help you. We're going to support you in bringing these pieces together. So I don't even think the training is actually the most important part. It's teaching young athletes how to live life and how to manage their energy and their time.
I think the awareness piece certainly is something that, while a lot of college freshmen or whomever, whether it's a junior college transfer or whatever, they come into the program with very wide eyes, wanting to be a starter, wanting to be an impact player, but doesn't also understand that to be a significant, to play a significant contribution to the team, it is a 24-hour job.
No doubt.
You might not be training for 24 hours, but the way that you have to manage your affairs, your social life, your academic life, your recovery, the training room, the rehab you need to do, the training, the putting shots up, to be successful at this highly competitive level, it's 24 hours. There is literally no days off and no time off. So I'm likewise with you. I'm blown away that there is that sort of lack of awareness, despite literally going anywhere, whether it's online or elsewhere, and finding access to good or bad information as well. So when you have that, and I love the 3A's, the awareness, the accountability, the action, how do you go from taking a college freshman, likewise in this continuation of this model, and you start to apply the training, you start to discuss maybe the psychological approaches, the mindset, if you will. What are some of the steps, whether it's, from a psychological approach, whether it's a nutritional approach, whether it's the lifestyle of what it takes to be successful? What are some of the nuggets that you might share if this was a 10-minute, 5-minute conversation with a college freshman that has no clue about the various aspects of an integrated performance model?
Yeah, I love that. I think the way that I do life, the way that I live life is in community. And, man, I love the guys I'm working with, both from a staff perspective and our players. And so I think it's doing life with them. It's saying it's built on this mentorship, idea or concept, where you're taking a guy under your wing and saying, hey, this is how you do it. You watch me, you watch the guys that have been around, you watch, how they prepare, so I do everything from, I make little audio clips. I send them to my guys, just reminders, man. I think life is so layered, so you have to, every day you're adding another layer of, what you're about, and that could be good or bad. But it's just constant accountability, asking people. I think we've kind of got away from getting in each other's lives, and that can be uncomfortable at times, to have someone in your life. And I know for me, when people are constantly asking me what's going on here and how you doing here, that can be uncomfortable at times, but that's necessary. If we're going to grow, we got to be pushed. And I think a lot of that is the social aspect of it.
I was having a conversation with Coach Greg Adamson at University of Tennessee. And one of the things that really resonated from this talk was he shared that, in his sort of pursuits of social media, that before he sends anything out, social media, tweet, whatever, he wants to make 5 touch points with a student athlete. So it's like a 5-to-1 ratio. And what I love about that is that it's a system, right? In which we'll start talking about maybe this system-based approach and some of the strategies. But it's his own personal system of continuing to stay in communication with the student athletes. And I love the fact that you share clips, that you stay involved in their lives, that you reach out to people and you continue to have a dialogue and a communication with your athletes. Because as we sort of, certainly within the time of this airing, I mean, Conscious Coaching and Brett Bartholomew's books coming out as far as building buy-in. Well, there's no better way of building buy-in than continuing to have a relationship with the student athlete. So I love that sort of approach to it. To kind of circle back around, you talk about maybe a system-based approach, and at least in our pre-show notes, I'd love to kind of talk about maybe some of the systems that you guys employ, and it could be, technical, tactical X's and O's of strength conditioning. It could be systems that help athletes improve sleep or recovery or regeneration, nutritional systems, anything. I mean, I'm kind of giving you the floor to share some of the wisdom and experiences of what you do at Liberty.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is building that stuff into your training or everyday life. So, for example, we have convocation 3 times a week that our student athletes are required to be at, kind of like it or not. So that's a good thing and a bad thing. They do a great job bringing in speakers and keeping it engaging. But, so those 3 days a week, we do a quick recovery test. We use First Beat. So at about 10:15, all my guys congregate in the locker room. We turn the lights out and 5 minutes just laying down, and we're just gathering that information and seeing how guys are recovering day to day. So we get at least 3 days a week that. I've kind of experimented with surveys and questionnaires based on, the 5 pillars for us: mindset, how you doing today, how you feeling, scale of 1 to 5, scale of 1 to 10, and we've tweaked it. And there's some models that are out that you can look at, but. So yeah, we just with sleep, I experiment so much, Adam. We used HRV for training for a little while, where guys would input their sleep. It's not the most accurate way, but again, it raises awareness. We've really started to do these little mini workshops within our community at Liberty, where we'll go over to the track facility or to where track meets, and we'll do a session on sports psych, or we'll do a session on nutrition. So we're trying to build this stuff in. The other thing that I've kind of been doing and experimenting with is I'll build my testing into our weekly training. So every week on Monday, you might do a vertical jump test just so I can see kind of the correlations and the trends that are happening, week to week, month to month.
No, I think a couple of things really resonate from what you shared. Is the fact of obviously monitoring and measuring, right? If you're trying to get any sort of result, I think the easiest way, Peter Drucker said it from a business management standpoint, that we manage what we measure. So to actually measure, whether it's HRV or the heart rate responses or the readiness of your student athletes is a critical factor of understanding and managing their ability to balance this training, recovery, stress management. And then having some experience with using First Beat and HRV in our own training. I love the fact that the workshops, or whether, we could go down some wellness questionnaires standpoints, but I think the workshops are a tremendous way of advocating and educating for a variety of different modalities of sport performance, whether it is a workshop centric around sleep or nutrition or, visualization or self-talk. It can be a very cost-effective way that isn't technologically dependent to implement and change athletes' behaviors when you have that buy-in and you provide that educational approach. It certainly takes time. It certainly takes labor. But if you're a university that might be maybe like yours, I don't know, certainly with ours that has to sort of balance the fiscal sort of constraints of things, then you find yourself trying to find cost-effective ways of delivering the same information without necessarily acquiring pricey technologies. So, and then lastly, you certainly talked about the wellness questionnaires, and that's something that I rely pretty heavily on here at Wichita State, just because it is, again, it's free. You don't need, while there are some consumer markets with Coach Me Plus and Smartabase and some other really good athlete management systems to implement some of these things, a Google Docs sheet or a Qualtrics survey is free, and for most people can acquire those through their university from a research standpoint. So I'd love to talk. I mean, you touched upon sort of sport performance technologies, which I think is sort of in style right now for a lot of people trying to objectively measure their impact as a coach. Are there any other technologies you guys are looking to use or using, experimenting with? You talked about kind of experimenting a lot, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of where we're at as an industry in this sort of technological bubble that we might be living in.
Yeah, that's great. So first off, I think I'm a technology junkie, man. I love it. I think it's great, but I also believe that it's a blessing and a curse. I think we're inundated and overwhelmed with tech and data and all this stuff. For me, the bottom line is it's a great tool. It's feedback, but it will never take the place of human contact and human interaction and kind of the intuitive feel that a coach develops over time. So I think it has its place, but I don't think it's gonna, it just has to be used in a smart way. So yeah, I think for us, when I came in, I thought live heart rate tracking was important. So I purchased on my own like 15 units of a Polar indoor team app, just so we could kind of get the ball rolling. And so we just tracked live heart rates. We projected them onto a screen in the gym and just showed coach what we could do with that. And then from there, we kind of took the next step and we did elite HRV, which we'd have guys, do an HRV test, quick recovery kind of test. And we tracked that over time. So we just really just gathering information, data, and seeing how we could use it. And then we kind of evolved from there. So we've been kind of just slowly evolving in our technology. And now we use First Beat, like I said. And I think it's really valuable. I just think it's valuable for guys to see how they're responding and adapting to stress in life, that be physical or psychological.
What's really powerful about measuring it, right? You have the practitioner side, like you and I, that uses that information in a way to particularly intervene with the training approach that we might take with the student athlete, but maybe not necessarily recognized by a lot of people. But the other end of the scope, which is the student athlete and that learned behavior of recognizing how much their sleep impacts their HRV score, or how much their anxiety or their social or academic stressors impacts their HRV. And I think that is maybe justifies the cost as well. So that when you are as a coach are saying, hey, we need to get the importance of 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep a night. We need to be trying to eat 3 square meals and snacking throughout the day. And it should have protein and fat and carbohydrates. And we go on and on and on from our pedestal talking about some of the approaches that it takes to be successful at a high level. They get to see it. They get to actually see the number as it moves up or moves down based on a variety of different factors. And I think that's a powerful visualization for what the student athlete needs this day, right? They need to see it, not just believe whatever a coach is saying.
I 100% agree, Adam. I think you're right on there. I think, this generation and really, I mean, we're such multifaceted learners. What you see, what you hear, what you feel. This integrated approach to how we take in and consume information is important. Like you're going to have learners that are more visual. You're going to have learners that are more kinesthetic, audible, whatever the case may be. And I think for sure in this generation, one of my biggest aha moments is going into the locker room and having 12 of our 15 guys on a device. Whether that's Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And I love that stuff. I just think the way that we deliver information has to be engaging, and it has to be in a way that they can consume it.
Oh man, you spoke and it sounded like Gary Vaynerchuk from Vaynerchuk Media. And the reason I say that is because so much of his sort of advertising sort of philosophy is to meet the consumer where they're at, right? And I think so much in education we're resistant of that the way that I learned when I was growing up in the 80s or the 70s or whatever generation you grew up, that's the way I'm going to teach. And I think now we have to recognize that the athletes and the students and the pupils, if you will, they're in a different society. There's different ways of reaching them. And that might be Snapchat. That might be Instagram. That might be Facebook. And it's not what we want as a coach, perhaps, or as an educator, but we have to recognize the hard truths that these are where the athletes are at, and our education and the way that we reach them might be a different approach than what it was 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Adam, you're dropping bombs, brother. That was good. That was really good.
You said it, and I think you're absolutely right on the money when you talk about technology being both a blessing and a curse, because I think it's very easy to get into a trap of saying, hey, we don't have velocity-based training here. We can't acquire the latest workload monitoring technologies and accelerometries and GPS technologies. And I think, wow, that can be, that's sort of self-fulfilling, right? To go down that pathway and to blame, complain, and defend. But what's a smarter approach is understanding that there are different ways that you can monitor these things through cost-effective ways like session RPE, through wellness questionnaires, through constant communication with your student athletes to get both an internal and external measures of the workloads that they do. And I love the fact, and I think this is a critical point that you shared, of building your testing modalities into your training environment. So you're not wasting a training session, but you're constantly keeping your thumb on the pulse to their physiological readiness and changes. And I think that's brilliant and something that, as I've listened and shared with other people, that a lot of expert coaches are continuing to make the training the test and the test the training. And I love to hear that, because it sort of validates, or at least makes me feel like what we're doing is working as well. I'd like to maybe turn the last little portion of this thing around and center it a little bit on you, because we've discussed technology, we touched upon sort of reaching the athletes where they're at and the various sort of performance models. But as we kind of come towards the end of this, when you talk and when you think of, right, if this was word association, and this is obviously the Decoding Excellence show, but with excellence, whether it's a coach or an athlete, a husband, a father, I mean, what does a word like excellence means to you?
Man, that's a good question. That's a deep question. So to me, excellence is bringing your very best, man. I talked about everybody running their own race earlier, and I think we can get caught up in this track of comparing. Like I have to be the best that I can be, and so I think every day it's waking up, trying to be the best version of yourself, and that could probably be a little cliche right now, with all the quotes dropping everywhere and all this stuff. But really, man, it's just it's pursuing your very best. It's competing on a daily basis to be the best that you can be. And so that's my off the cuff definition of excellence. I
loved your response, because so much of my coaching philosophy, very sort of West Coast guy and influenced by Pete Carroll, is that relentless pursuit for a competitive edge. And then obviously with Patrick and some of the smart guys working in the Seahawks, Michael Gervais, and sort of that Nike sort of pathway that seemed to resonate out there in the Oregon area and the West Coast, with Pete's sort of philosophy of that relentless pursuit wherever you're at, whether you're at a high school coach, whether you're coaching in summer camp, or you're, junior college, Division II, Division III, Division I, mid-major, Power 5, it is making the very best of what you can where you're at with the resources you have, and continuing in a pursuit for excellence. That's right on the money, man.
I love that. That's good, man. That's really good.
If you were to reach back, okay, and you're coming up on this 40th birthday, if you were to reach back and time travel and find your sort of 30-year-old self or 25-year-old self, what would you tell yourself? What would be that piece of advice that might set you up for greater success? Not necessarily regrets, but what would you do to give you a little help during that age?
I would have asked way more questions, just question everything and know the what and the why, both. And I think, in what we do, it can be such an ego-driven profession, man. Like, look at me, look what I can do. And I think, just the ability to learn, to share, to grow, to live life together, it would be to be more pursuant, man. And I feel like already I ask a lot of questions, man. But I think it would just be to expose myself to as many different methodologies, philosophies, whatever you want to call it, that I can find. I just think that it's so important to see how other people are doing it. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but it's important for us to just see what else is out there.
Yeah, I think the idea of just trying to get exposed to different sort of modalities and philosophies, even if you don't agree with them. I think, I try to, someone told me the advice of read a paper or something that you're interested in, and then try to read a counterpoint to that said paper. And just to get different perspectives on differences of that continuum is an important trait, and adopt what you want and discard what you don't. And you'll eventually make your own system into what works with you individually, logistically, administratively, with the organization and the place that you're in. If a young coach or any coach, right? If someone was traveling through maybe the Oregon area or the Portland area, or they're geographically bound, right? They're overseas or something. What's the best way that the audience could reach you or get in contact with you?
Oh, man, for sure. I'm a big Twitter guy. And probably people think I'm on there 24/7, but really, I'm really meticulous about how I organize my day. So I wake up, between 5 and 6, and I'll program a couple of tweets in, based off what I'm reading and researching and, listening to, whatever. So it's all theme based. So one day you might find all stuff on psychology. The next day you might find stuff on training or questionnaires or whatever. But yeah, Twitter. I don't really mess with Facebook. My Twitter's connected, but it's at Hoop Diaries. It's just kind of my journey, my life.
Yeah, excellent. I'll make sure to include your social media Twitter handle in the show notes as well. But Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Decoding Excellence show and sharing your journey and your wisdom and just your thoughts on this performance model and how you've built it, how it's evolved, and to talk a little bit about asking better questions and learning how to earn and building culture and this long-term athletic development approach to training athletes and using technology to position your athletes in a better system and a better place. Can't thank you enough for what you shared, and really hope that we can continue this dialogue and this conversation in the future and well past just an hour-long show here.
Adam, it's been a blast, man. Every time I get an opportunity to do stuff like this, I want to leave something for the host. So this is I thought of you when I read this, and so I'm just going to read it to you. It's a quote by James Michener and passed on to me by one of my mentors, Kevin Carroll, who they call the Catalyst. So it says, "The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he's always doing both. And that, my friend, is you."
Oh, man, I got a smile from ear to ear hearing that. So there's no better way of ending the show than that. Sir, I am humbled. I am privileged to get to spend some time with you. And thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I hope you take care and good luck in the future and good luck in the next couple games here.
You got it, Adam. Let's do it again, man. Appreciate you.
I I want to thank Performance Director of Liberty Men's Basketball, Coach Henry Barrera, for coming on the Decoding Excellence show. I personally took a lot away from this show when Coach talked about the need for developing a strong culture as it precedes technology and some of the performance systems and strategies in this performance model really resonated with me. When he discusses some of his mentors and his own coaching pathway and journey into performance training, from Concordia to Nike to his now current position at Liberty, there's just a lot of information that is both on the surface and much deeper in this conversation. So I wanted to thank Coach for coming on. And like always, this show is centered around having a conversation, a dialogue between two coaches to discuss the intangibles, the characteristics, the behaviors, the tools, the tactics, the techniques that goes into ultimately high performance training and what it means to become excellent at your craft, to truly seek out mastery and to embrace the journey. And like always, if you enjoyed this show, please share it on your favorite social media of choice. And please go onto iTunes, leave us a review. This helps us not only create better exposure for the show, but ultimately so that a young coach can browse iTunes and find the Decoding Excellence show and find some of the wisdom and find the great coaches that come onto this show. I would really appreciate your support. Like always, until next time, thank you.